Welcome on into first pitch here, the 19th of July, a little game day edition, getting you some first pitch early here. It's what we do. We're happy to get up in the AM to get you that actionable info. And who's joining me, wiping the sleep out of their eyes? It's Tokyo Brandon, Adam Trigger, and Bryan Leonard, looking sprightly gentlemen. So I say we get right into it and start off with a man representing us from the other side of the world. It's Tokyo Brandon, and he wants to talk some Red Sox and A's. Brandon, this series, apparently if you lose, it means you score no run. 7-0 for the Red Sox game one. The A's somehow went 3-0 yesterday. So how are you going to be betting game three? That little mini trend continue, or do we see a little back this afternoon?
Yeah, I might get accused of picking low-hanging fruit here, but I just don't see the Oakland A's beating the Red Sox 2 games in a row. That game yesterday was just an aberration. I mean, how can a AA level team hold the Red Sox down to 0 runs in 9 innings, and they've got one of the worst bullpens in MLB? So I keep track of my rankings. Last 10 days is what I mainly keep track of. And I have my own rankings for bullpens and lineups. And I have the Boston Red Sox in the last 10 days ranked number 6 in MLB. And I have their bullpen ranked number 4 in MLB in the last 10 days, where Oakland is in the bottom 10 for both of those categories. No idea how they shut the Red Sox out yesterday, but I think it would be a real miracle for this AA team to beat the Red Sox 2 games in a row, especially with the starting pitchers. I mean, Bayo's on for the Red Sox. He's not great, but he's got a 1.20 whip, which is not bad. It's pretty good for this year, the way MLB batters are cranking it over the wall. So he's serviceable, and serviceable should be good enough against Waldichuk. Waldichuk is not a great pitcher. He's got a 1.84 whip. I mean, he's almost putting 2 guys on the base per inning. And not only that, but in his last 3 starts, he's gone 3.2, 1.1, and 4.1 innings. He's only averaging 3.4 innings per outing, which just opens up that horrible bullpen. I've got them ranked 21st out of 30 teams. Going to open up that horrible bullpen to get ripped by the number 6 lineup in MLB. I think it's a name your score here for the Boston Red Sox. The minus 1.5 run line. They're on the road. They get 9 innings of at-bats. I don't know if they hold them to 0, if that trend that you're talking about, Dan, will continue. But this probably will be another one of those 9-1, 9-3, 10-2 kind of games. I think the Red Sox just crank them. So I'm on the Red Sox minus 1.5 here. That's how I'm breaking that one down.
Sometimes the low-hanging fruit is the way to go. Usually means it's pretty ripe there, Tokyo Brandon. So we're looking towards the Red Sox bouncing back against the lowly Oakland A's. Adam Trigger's with us as well, and he wants to take a look at the Dodgers and the Orioles. The Dodgers looking to make it 3 in a row, as they won 10-3 yesterday. So they're looking for a potential sweep against Baltimore. And Trig, every time I see you on, whether it's Wager Talk Today, whether it's here on First Pitch, I feel like some way, somehow, you bring up this Orioles team. So you've had a pretty good read on them. They tell them, hey, put the brooms away. How are you going to be betting this game against the Dodgers?
Yeah, Dan, I mean, I feel like I've done well in Orioles games. I was on the show on Monday, and that didn't pan out despite I felt like Grayson Rodriguez pitched pretty good, which was kind of like the case I was trying to make. And he just kind of, last inning sort of let it go. And of course, the Orioles lost that game. And I'll got to be honest, I thought the Orioles might get something out of this series. So that was kind of on Monday, I talked about the Orioles being the side I would want. They blow the lead, they lose the game, and then they lost yesterday. So now they're kind of, staring a sweep in the face after an 8-game win streak. I guess I'll look at the total more here, because the concern for me with the Orioles in this spot would be, I don't think they're a horrible bet at plus money per se, but they've got the Rays coming up this weekend. And I almost have to wonder if they're starting to get in a mindset maybe we can't beat the Dodgers or this, this is just, it is what it is. and we have a huge series this weekend with the Rays that's essentially going to be for first place in the American League East. So that sort of puts me off the Orioles side as a potential option. But I actually kind of like, I'll explain why I now like Julio Urias. I didn't earlier in the year. And Dean Kramer, I think, are both pretty good pitching options. So I would look toward the under here. It's moved a little bit. I think you might see 9s at some places now, but if you can still find 9.5, I think that's a pretty good bet. I'll start with Kramer. So I had a 5%er over the weekend on Friday night. Dean Kramer got the win there, and, they beat the Marlins. Kramer had a really bad June, but he was someone like, I felt like I was ahead of the curve on him early in the season. He was great, like for the first couple months, really specifically May, he had a really nice run. June, he gets blown up. I think he's in a little bit of a bounce back mode. You go to that start he made prior to the All-Star break, 7 innings, 10 strikeouts against the Yankees. You go to last Friday, he throws 6 solid innings against the Marlins and beats them. That was the game I had the Orioles for 5%. And I think he kind of continues to sort of ride that momentum here, and I could see him giving us a good outing against the Dodgers team that hasn't seen a ton of them. So you look at ways to cool off a decent lineup like the Dodgers, it might be someone that they really have very little to no exposure against. On the other side, now, if you've watched these shows, if you've read my analysis, I've been kind of, talking about Julio Urias being a fade all season. But I want to sort of clarify like that and why I would be willing to go with him now. So for me, he was a fade of being an elite guy that he was the past couple of years. And then more recently, I kind of felt like he was hurt. He then goes on the IL with the hamstring injury. So all of that kind of showed early in the year. And it was very obvious when he looked at his numbers that this was not the same guy for one reason or another that we saw the last 2 seasons, because the last 2 seasons he's been sub-3 ERA and hasn't had a whip around 1. So I mean, those are elite numbers for a starter in Major League Baseball. And I just felt like he wasn't an elite starter this year. Now, he goes on the IL, he's back. He's been better since he's come back. He's had 3 starts now. So like now I'm sort of like willing to look at that and say, okay, maybe the hamstring was holding him down a little bit. 6 scoreless innings last time out against the Mets. I kind of think Urias probably improves on those season-long numbers. The whip is still really good, 1.11 this season, despite having to kind of pitch through injury and pitch through early season struggles. So he's a guy I would probably look to play on now going forward. Now, I don't really want to play on him here against an Orioles team that I like in a spot where they're trying to avoid a sweep at home. But I think you can make a case for him pitching well. And that leads me to the under because I like Kramer. And then you've got 2 bullpens. The Orioles have one of the best bullpens in the league. No one's going to really argue with that. And of course, you get them with their top guys rested here because they got blown out yesterday. They were beat the night before. So Orioles are going to have their top bullpen guys. On the other side, the Dodgers bullpen has really improved of late. Their season-long numbers are not great, but this was a team that really had no closer early on. They didn't really have well-defined roles in the bullpen, and they struggled in April and into May. If you look at the Dodgers bullpen numbers the last, let's call it 2 months, 6 weeks, but what have you, much better, and they're starting to sort of fall into place. The underlying metrics there are good. So I like both bullpens, specifically the Orioles, who I have rated top 5 and have all season. And I like both starters, especially Urias, who I think has a little bit of a bounce back in his future. So I would play the under here. 9.5 seems high. Even 9, you still got the key number. You're not going to get beat on 4-4. So I like the under in Orioles Dodgers today.
That under looking just a bit too rich for our man Adam Trigger. Check him out, wt.buzz/AT. And final big game breakdown before we swing it back around the horns here for best bets will be from Bryan Leonard. Hey, Brian, you know what? If the Padres are looking to get out of this little slump that they were in, I think they could just ask to play Alek Manoah every day, right? That would definitely help them out. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. They're going to be seeing Berrios tonight as they're taking on Toronto. How are you going to be betting this one, Brian?
Yeah, you stole a lot of my reason for this one with that one comment. But yeah, this is, two of the better teams in Major League Baseball, two teams that a lot of people thought would be going to the playoffs before the season started. Toronto's been pretty much what we thought they'd be, probably a little bit less. But San Diego is a team with all that talent, and they just haven't put it together. Now, they have gotten off to a pretty decent start in the second half of the season, but as you mentioned, they won't be facing Manoah every day. Yu Darvish comes into play with a 4.65 ERA, but his advanced numbers show he's been a bit unlucky in that regard. His xERA is a run lower, and his BABIP was 3.14, which is a little bit high. His road ERA, 5.52 on the season. And this is a pretty good hitter's park. And keep in mind, San Diego, it's a little bit different this year than it has been in the past, but it's still not a bad place to pitch. Used to be a great place to pitch if you're pitching night games. A little bit different. All these stadiums change a little bit every year. You got to keep up on that. That's something I think we all do a pretty good job of. Jose Berrios has a nice 4.1 ERA this year. His advanced numbers are all higher. He's been outstanding pitching at home with a 2.83 ERA, but he's been a bit fortunate. So, Darvish is pitching a little bit less. His results are a little bit less than what his advanced numbers show. Berrios a little bit better what his numbers show. And I mentioned home and road, and a lot of people don't put a lot of faith in those numbers, and it's for good reason. A lot of the pitchers, in fact, most of the pitchers, they'll be really good at home one year, and the next year it'll be totally different. Where you make your money is where you can find that one pitcher who seems to pitch much better at home than they do on the road, or even better if they pitch on the road, better than they do at home. You get really good value in that regard. So the Padres pounded Alex Manoah yesterday, who still has major problems, even coming back from the training facility in Florida. The offense explosion for the Padres comes with a grain of salt because of that, as we mentioned. Both teams have major star power, but we prefer this Blue Jays team as a whole in this contest. The line's more than fair coming off that embarrassing loss. I like to play on good teams after a bad performance, and we saw that yesterday, at least in that one game. San Diego's a team right now. A lot of people starting to believe that coming out of the break. I just don't believe teams can turn it on, turn it off like that. So I'm not a big believer in San Diego at this point. I think Toronto's a better team. You're getting them just slightly better than a pick-em price here coming off of an embarrassing loss. Give me Toronto in this one.
Towards the Blue Jays, and a decent amount having to do with the pitching on the mound there tonight, which is apropos as we start getting into best bets, because Tokyo Brandon's got a little pitching prop for you here in the New York Mets and Chicago White Sox. Verlander on the mound for the Mets, and thinking maybe he's just not getting up there on those earned Ks. How are you going to be betting Verlander?
You read my mind, Dan. Yeah.
Or the notes. Verlander. Either that or the notes, yeah.
Either that or the notes. Either you have some special mental skills or you have very good reading skills, or both. So Verlander, yeah, Cy Young Award winner from last year, kind of not really dropped off a cliff, but he's dropped a little bit. His K numbers are still up there. His velocity is dropping down, and his K number is, his K per nine is 7.56 right now, and that's okay. Today's his strikeout over under is 6.5. Which means he has to throw 7 strikeouts to hit that number. Now, if you look at his last few starts, he hasn't thrown 7 strikeouts since June 3rd against the Blue Jays. He got 8 in that game, but 8 starts and he hasn't hit 7. And the reason why is because he's not pitching enough to do it. I mean, he is going 6-7 innings here and there. But when your K per 9 is 7.56, you have to pitch almost 9 innings to get to 7 strikeouts. The White Sox, they are striking out in the last week to 10 days. They're striking out at 9 strikeouts per 9 innings, which means they would have to play 7 full innings for Verlander to strike out 7. Anyways, if you do the math, it comes out to about 5.31 strikeouts. So I expect him to have 5 to 6 strikeouts in this game, but I don't expect him to hit 7. So my money is on Justin Verlander under 6.5 strikeouts in this game. I don't think he'll go long. I think he'll probably go 6, maybe into the 7th inning. He'll probably end up with 5 or 6 strikeouts. So I do like the under 6.5 strikeouts for Justin Verlander today against the Chicago White Sox.
Tokyo Brandon looking towards the under on the K's for Verlander. Check him out at WT.buzz/TB, #1 profit leader last year and year prior as well. So definitely when he's talking some baseball, whether it's Korean baseball, Japanese baseball, or Major League Baseball, you should probably listen to the former scout there and check him out on wagertalk.com. All right, Trixie, you heard the thoughts there from Tokyo Brandon about the pitching, at least on one side of this matchup. But you want to talk side between Mets and White Sox in your best bet. And this is a spot you've continued to add a little bit more to your handicapping profile. So how are you going to be betting this one?
Yeah, I mean, so let's just kind of build off of what Tokyo Brandon said. A big reason Verlander's not striking guys out is his command's been poor, to say the least. 6 walks against the Dodgers last time out. Walk rate for him is as high as it's been since 2017, which is significant because that was his last year in Detroit. It was kind of the outlier year for him where it looked like he was on the decline. Then, of course, he goes to Houston and finds the fountain of youth of sorts, right? But that's important because 2017 was the worst year. If you look at his statistics over the last, really over his career, it was a bad year for him. And his numbers are starting to look a lot like that season. There's also no guarantee he's going to be in a Mets uniform that much longer. I know they're kind of trying to shop him around. I don't know how that really affects him mentally, but this isn't a guy. I don't think this is a guy just trying to read between the lines. I don't think he necessarily wanted to leave New York. He was brought in to help his team win. So now to sort of hear your name in trade talks that they might be going in a different direction is that might mess with him a little bit mentally here as well. So I don't disagree with Brandon's take on the potential under Ks, and for a lot of the same reasons, it's why I'm willing to play against him here. Yesterday, the Mets managed to turn what probably should have been a blowout into an 11-10 game, and in the process, used their bullpen. They were up. They probably should have cruised to a win, but instead, couple of the depth guys get knocked around. Trevor Gott, the guy they just brought in a trade, gives up 3 runs, and suddenly they need to use Brooks Raley, Adam Ottavino, and Drew Robertson to close out a game that got close, and that's significant because the Mets, that bullpen is shaky, and when they've kind of had to use their high leverage guys, I tend to be okay with playing against them, coming off of that. On the other side, this is really more about getting the run head start on the road with the White Sox, who I don't think are, all that. It's a competitive matchup as far as I'm concerned. 2 very similar teams. Verlander shouldn't be priced as the elite option here, and the fact that the Mets are laying 1.5 at this price, knowing that you're going to get the extra at bat with the White Sox, is. That's really where this one just is it's just the price is off in my opinion. So even though the White Sox have had their sort of, issues, the Mets have had their issues, and both of these teams are actually teams I kind of want to play on right now. I just think the head start with the +1.5, getting the extra at bat is too much. As far as Tuki Toussaint is concerned, I mean, the Mets saw him a little bit with the Braves, but he only made 2 starts against them, and he's been much better as a reliever. But last 2 starts haven't been terrible. 10.1 innings, 3 earned runs. He's kept them competitive, and I think if he keeps the White Sox competitive here, the White Sox showed you what they can do offensively yesterday. That was not something you've seen a ton of from the Mets this year, an 11-run outburst. So I just like the White Sox ability to score runs more than the Mets. And then, of course, it just all comes down to Verlander. I think he's way overpriced here. That's really why I would consider the White Sox in this game. So it hasn't made my client card yet. I still want to look at a couple other things as we're filming this pretty early in the day. But White Sox +1.5 from a value perspective, -110 on the road. You force the Mets to sort of beat you by 2 with one less at bat, I think it's a pretty good bet. So my best bet for the show, I will take White Sox plus 1.5. Competitive game, and I think they've got a good chance to win.
See, it's not just money line bets you have to make in baseball anymore. How about the plus 1.5 on the run line is what our man Trig is looking towards, and kind of backing up Tokyo Brandon's best bet in the process of doing so. Bryan Leonard, you're going to get the last word here. Make sure you check him out as he has an MLB double play up, and you can get it for under $20. That's a nice little value here. Speaking about value, Trig. But Bryan, why not end with a marquee matchup like the Detroit Tigers taking on the Kansas City Royals, right? They could have set the total at 20.5 yesterday, and it still wouldn't have been high enough. So it's set at 8 today. We're not seeing that, but how are you going to be betting this one?
Yeah, I broke down San Diego and Toronto for the big game breakdown. Well, this isn't really a big game, Detroit and Kansas City here. But you don't need to have good teams to make money. And I know Tokyo Brandon's been fading the Oakland A's, but I've been making good money on playing JP Sears in the first 5 innings for the A's. So you can still make money off of bad teams. But here with Detroit and Kansas City, neither team has had much success this season when facing southpaws. Tigers come in with a WRC plus of 96, the Royals a 91. To their credit, both these teams are using their minor league players, bringing them up and giving them a chance to play. And that's something that I think is very good for both these teams, because I think the future is more, obviously, brighter for both these teams. I really like the Tigers some of these Tigers minor leaguers, like the drafting that they've done. I think they're a team that the next few years, they're going to be a team we'll be talking about. Kansas City, I still think Kansas City is one of the worst teams in baseball, but we'll see what happens there. But these two combined to score 21 runs, as you mentioned yesterday, after scoring 5 the night before. Based on the offensive success of both these teams this season, we know what the outlier is in that scenario. Last night's scoring was way up across the board in Major League Baseball. In fact, many on Twitter were talking about a new live ball being introduced last night. I don't see it. It's because that misconception right there helps us in this game here. If everybody starts talking about the ball being changed, which I don't believe it is, then we could take advantage of that when we're playing any type of numbers today. The increased scoring yesterday, I think, has more of an effect on what the weather has been. We've had extremely hot weather across the nation for the last few days, last week or so. So the ball flies better in that. But if you're just talking about the one day yesterday, it's been really hot for the last week everywhere else. So I'm not buying into that. The ball will travel farther when it's a hot day. Kansas City is one of those cities that is really muggy many times and has an effect on the way the ball flies. So I look for this game to go under the total. Two bad offenses coming off a 21-run explosion. Expect the lack of scoring talent in this game to show itself tonight. So I'm going to play that game under with two bad teams in Detroit and Kansas City.
Looking towards the under here on a little Wednesday game day edition here, going with the night game. Bryan Leonard, man of the people. Check out the MLB double play for just under $20 today. And since we have no gold sheet play, I'll do this one for Paco in the comments. While we don't have a graphic for you, just a quick little recap. Tokyo Brandon looking towards Red Sox. He's looking towards Verlander under the 6.5 Ks. Adam Triggers looking towards the O's here in the bounce back against the Dodgers, and in the Mets and Chicago White Sox, he's taking that plus 1.5 with the White Sox and running. Bryan Leonard looking for the bounce back for, excuse me?
I like the under in Orioles. I don't really love the Orioles side. I would.
Well, yeah, I really love
their under 9.5. Yeah,
I got a little bit sleepy here in the morning. So that's on me. We're looking towards the under in Dodgers Orioles, and he's taking that 1.5 with the White Sox and running. And Bryan Leonard looking towards Toronto in the San Diego Padres game, looking towards that under in the Detroit Tigers and Kansas City Royals. So hey, the notes are good enough to make sure I can read Tokyo Brandon's mind, but not good enough to read Trig's mind. I guess that's what we learned here at the end. I've been your host, Dan Alexander. Big thanks to those gentlemen there. And you don't have to go anywhere. If you need some more handicapping info, just stay right here and check out Wager Talk today, only on Wager Talk TV.